still have going into our common sense the 19th century myth, which succeeded the ceramic myth in Western history. I call it the myth of the fully automatic model. I know that. See, a philosopher is a sort of intellectual yokel who gawks at things that sensible people take for granted. And sensible people, existence is nothing at all. I mean, just basic, go on and do something. See, this is the current movement in philosophy, logical analysis. It doesn't think about existence.
Oh, yeah.
It's a meaningless concept.
That's right.
Therefore, philosophy has become the discussion of trivia. No good philosopher lies awake nights worrying about the destiny of man and the nature of God and the all that sort of thing. Because philosopher today is a practical fellow who comes to the university with a briefcase at 9 and leaves at 5.
So I'm probably gonna wrap stuff around that, like a hexagon, a stuff to protect it.
And then he would, as
It's
William
made
Earl
with like
said
a
in
heart
very funny essay,
behind it
he would come to work in
and
a white coat if he
stuff.
thought he could get away with it. Problem is, he's lost his sense of wonder. Wonder is like in modern philosophy something you mustn't have. It's like enthusiasm in 18th century England. It's a very bad form. But you see, I don't know what question to ask.
Bag needs a little bit more work too.
It isn't a question that I'm wondering about. It's an
Shield needs a lot.
Because I cannot
It just
formulate
started.
the question that is my wonder.
I'll have to wrap
The
this
moment my
stuff
mouth
with
opens
hemp
to utter it,
and a
I
bunch of
suddenly
shit,
find I'm talking nonsense.
and then paint it.
But that should not prevent wonder from being the foundation of
Oh,
philosophy.
but it'll be a lot like this stuff when it's done.
There is obviously a place in life for a religious attitude in the sense
Heavy
of
shield down.
awe, astonishment,
That's only at the end, right? We got a long ways for that.
That is also a basis of respect for existence. We don't have very much of it in this culture, even though we call it materialistic. In the culture that we call materialistic today, we are, of course, bent on the total destruction of material and its conversion into junk and poisonous gas as quickly as possible. This is not a materialistic culture, because it has no respect for material.
Right. There's stuff all around us. Art supplies are free, guys. Most of them. A little bit of glue and paint go a long way. Just grab it. Stones, sticks. Grow plants. Use them. Vines. You can grow vines to grow around things.
And every summer,
Travis, you can grow vine plants like morning glories, and then as they grow, they'll wrap around stuff. And then when the season ends, we can seal them to the sticks and stuff with some kind of sealant spray.
Now here is a solar system inside a galaxy. And one of the peculiarities of this solar system is that at least on the planet Earth, the thing peoples.
It
In
peoples
just the
itself.
same way that an apple tree apples.
Exactly. The
Now,
colony
maybe
of the Earth
2 million years
sprouted
ago,
us like fungus.
somebody came from another galaxy in a flying saucer and had a look at the solar system. And they looked it over and shrugged their shoulders and said, just a bunch of rocks. And they went away. Later on, maybe 2 million years later, they came around and they looked at it again. And they said, excuse me, we thought it was a bunch of rocks, but it's peopling. And it's alive after all. It has done something intelligent.
And that's the whole purpose of everything. Do something. Create.
In exactly the same way that the apples grow on the apple
Explore
tree.
what
If
has been
evolution
created.
means anything, it means that. But you see, we curiously twist it. We say, well, first of all, in the beginning, there was nothing but gas and rock. And then intelligence happened to arise in it, you know, like a sort of fungus or slime on the top of the whole thing. But we're thinking in a way, you see, that disconnects the intelligence from the rocks. Where there are rocks, watch out. Watch out.
Watch out.
Because
Beware
the rocks are going
and
eventually to
beware.
come alive.
Stranger all mysteries.
Theology has not, as a matter of fact, had a very distinguished record in promoting the study of other than the Christian religion. Because you see, if you know in the first
crystal
place that you have
formation
the true religion,
is the most
there really
resilient
is no
form
point
of
in
life.
studying any other one.
Vessel.
And you can very quickly find reasons for showing them to
Resonance.
be inferior.
It's all about resonance.
Because that was a foregone
The idea of
conclusion.
life has been
They had to be.
confused.
Because if, for example, you get into discussions as to whether Buddha was a more profound and spiritual character than Jesus Christ, you arrive at your decision on the basis of a scale of values which is, of course, Christian. And in this sense, the judge and the advocate are the same. Now, as you know, I'm not being very fair and very kind to modern theology, but there is this strange persistence of insisting that our group is the best group.
My God's dick is bigger than
And
your God's dick.
I feel that there is in this something peculiarly irreligious, and furthermore, it exhibits a very strange lack of faith.
That's why every time you put a face on something,
Because I believe that there is
God,
a strong
you know
distinction
you haven't got it.
between faith on the one hand and belief on the
God
other.
is bigger than
That belief is, as a matter of fact, quite contrary to
God
faith.
is bigger than all of that.
Because belief is really wishing. It's from the Anglo-Saxon root leaf, to wish. And
Born
belief,
from a wish.
stated, say, in the creed, is a fervent hope that the universe will turn out to be thus and so. And in this sense, therefore, belief precludes the possibility of faith, because faith is openness to truth, to reality, whatever it may turn out to be. I want to know the truth. That is the attitude of faith.
The difference between faith and
therefore,
belief,
to
right
use
there.
ideas about the universe and about God as something to hang on to, in the spirit of rock of ages cleft for me, and there's something very rigid about a rock. And we are finding our rock getting rather worn out in an age where it becomes more and more obvious that our world is a floating world. It's a world floating in space where all positions are relative and any point may be regarded as the center. A world which doesn't float on anything, and therefore the religious attitude appropriate to our time is not one of clinging to rocks, but of learning to
is
swim.
infinite.
And you know that if you get in the water and you've nothing to hold on to, and you try to behave as you would on dry land, you will drown. But if, on the other hand, you trust yourself to the water and let go, you will float. And this is exactly the situation of faith. A friend who was studying Zen in Japan, and he got pretty desperate to produce the answer of who he really is. And on his way to an interview with the master to give an answer to the problem, he noticed a very common sight in Japan, a big bullfrog sitting around in the garden. And he swooped this bullfrog up in his hand and dropped it in the sleeve of his kimono. And then he went into the master, and to give the answer of who he was, he suddenly produced the bullfrog. And the master said, too intellectual. In other words, this answer is too contrived. It's too much like Zen.
Don't think too much.
Many books. It's not the genuine thing. And so the method of teaching used by these great Eastern teachers is to make fools persist in their folly. But very rigorously and very consistently and very hard. Now, if you go to a Zen teacher, he'll say, well, I have nothing to teach. There is no problem. Everything's perfectly clear. And you think that one over. And you say he's probably being cagey. But the teacher says, quite honestly, I haven't anything to tell you. I don't teach anything. I have no doctrine. As I said to you in the beginning of this talk, I have nothing whatsoever to sell you. So the student thinks, my, this is very deep, because this nothing that he's talking about, this nothing that he teaches, is what they call in Buddhism shunyata, and it's supposed to be the ultimate reality. But as you know, if you know anything about these doctrines, this doesn't mean nothingness. Not kind of just nothing there at all, not just blank, but it means no thingness. It's the transcendental reality behind all separate and individual things, and that's something very deep and profound. So he knows that when the teacher said, I have nothing to teach, he meant this very esoteric no thing.
Well, it's not.
Well, he might also say then, if you have nothing to teach, what are all these students doing around here? And the teacher says, they are not doing anything. They're just they're just a lot of stupid people who live here. And he knows, again, you see, the stupid doesn't mean just straight stupid, but the higher stupidity of being people who are humble and don't have intellectual pride.
They're all part of the same compost heap.
The Christian proverb is that man's extremity is God's opportunity. And
you are not unique and special
people,
snowflake.
in other words, have to get
You're all part of the same decaying organic matter as everything else.
The idea that the moment you were born,
Nothing is static.
you were kicked off the edge of a precipice.
Everything is falling.
And you're
Everything
falling.
is falling apart.
As you fell, a great lump of rock came with you and is traveling alongside you. And you're clinging to it for dear life. And thinking, gee, I've got to hold on to this, you see? Well, it doesn't do a thing for you.
It falls with us.
And it's only making you anxious. And it's only when you understand that it doesn't do a thing for you that you let go and relax.
The flesh we cleave to doesn't help us.
So everybody's in this situation. We're all completely insecure. We're all headed straight for death as if we had been condemned by a judge. And yet here we are all clinging on to things. And we have all sorts of alibis for doing this. We say, well, I have responsibilities for my dependents and I've got to cling on. But all you're doing is you're teaching your dependents to cling the same way as you are. And making them miserable by learning to go on surviving compulsively. So the thing is, same way, if you're caught in a torrent and you try to get out of it by swimming against it, you'll just wear yourself out and you're still carried along with it. So the sensible thing to do is to turn around and swim with it.
Never fight
and if you want to get out of it, swim towards the edge. But go with it. Same way when you're sailing. Always keep the wind in your sails.
You've got an easy breezy wind at your back.
But use the wind.
Most of the
So
time.
it's this way, you know. We're all
If you
in
do
this
not
great stream of
understand
change, which we
very
call
few
life.
do, so don't feel
We
bad.
are the stream.
Easy
If you
breezy,
imagine you're separate
beautiful
from it and you're being carried
color,
along by it as if you were a cork, that's a delusion. You're a wave of the stream itself.
wave
So get
function,
with it.
frequency,
So you
resonance.
perform a discipline by experiment,
Get out of your own
by
way.
reductio ad absurdum of his premises.
Help me,
So in the
help
same
you,
way,
help
Guru,
me get out of my
whether
own
Hindu
way.
or Buddhist, performs a reductio ad absurdum on the premise of the skin-encapsulated ego.
Mine, yours,
Well, what happens then?
ours.
You might imagine from garbled accounts of Eastern mysticism that one thereupon disappears forever into an infinite sea of faintly mauve jello. And become so lost to the world and entranced that you forget your name, address, telephone number, and function in life. And nothing of the kind happens. The state of mystical illumination, although it may, in its sudden onset, be accompanied by a sensation of tremendous luminescence and transparency, as you get used to it, it's just like everyday life.
It's now it's
Here are the
happening.
things that you formerly thought were separate individuals.
It always
And
happens.
here is you, who you formerly thought was merely confronting these other people. When the great Dr. D.T. Suzuki was asked, what is it like to be enlightened? He said, it's just like ordinary everyday experience, except about 2 inches off the ground.
Oh, that's how you do that, bro. You
What is altered is not the way your
just
senses
to sit below it. It's
What
not
is
so
altered
hard.
is what you think about it. Your
Quality.
definition
That's
of what
quality
you see.
right there.
Your evaluation of it.
Nothing break.
So
That's
when
what
you
we like
don't
to
cling
say.
to it, when you have no longer a hostile attitude to the world because you know the world is you, it is. I mean, let's take it from the point of view of biology. If I describe the behavior of a living organism, I cannot possibly describe that behavior without simultaneously describing the behavior of the environment.
The boundaries we
So
draw
that I discover
are illusions.
that I don't describe organisms in environments. I describe a unified field of behavior called an organism environment. It's an awkward word. But there it is. The environment doesn't push the organism around. The organism doesn't push the environment around. They are two aspects or poles of the same process.
Inside,
In
outside,
the history
upside
of
down.
philosophy and poetry and art, we always find the interchange of two personality types, which I call prickles and goo.
Prickles and goo. This is my favorite.
The prickly people are advocates of intellectual
You can
positivism.
see the magnet prickles, and then when they turn to balls, that's what I see when he says prickles.
In their voices, and you know this very well in academic circles.
Magnetized.
Where there are people who are always edgy like that.
Like a cat pulling
And
its
they
hair out.
accuse other people of being disgustingly vague and miasmic and mystical. But the vague, miasmic, and mystical people accuse the prickly people of being mere skeletons with no flesh on their bones. They say to you, you just rattle.
NPCs
You're not really a human being.
is
You
the
know
new
the words, but
term.
you don't know the music. And so therefore, if you belong to the prickly type, you hope that the ultimate constituent of matter is particles. If you belong to the gooey type, you hope it's waves. If you are prickly, you're a classicist. And if you're gooey, you're a romanticist. And going back into medieval philosophy, if you're prickly, you're a nominalist. If you're gooey, you're a realist. And so it goes.
Live the old and now.
Well, that this natural universe
I like my prickles in my goo.
Not goo exclusively.
The crunchy, soft, prickly goo is delightful.
You see,
I suppose that's why this is the way it is.
If you've got your
Like a nerd's
magnification on
word.
something so that the focus is clear. You've got
Wretched
prickly
things, but crunchy and
You've got
soft.
structure, shape, clearly outlined, sharply defined. Be a little out of focus, it's going to go bleh.
Like a casserole. Beans and rice, where the rice on top is crunchy.
Because
And the beans underneath are soft.
it's like the question is the world basically stuff, like matter, or is it basically structure? Well, we find out, of course, today that in science we don't consider the idea of matter, of there being some sort of stuff.
Our body is light.
Because supposing you wanted to describe
We are
stuff,
mortal.
in what terms would you describe it? You always have to describe it in terms of structure. Something
body is
comfortable,
light.
something that can be designated as a pattern. So we never get to any basic stuff.
Our body is love. We are eternal.
There is a sense in which the universe is purely game,
Body is love.
but not in the sense of a
We are eternal.
one-upmanship game, but in the sense of music, which
Play
is
together.
lulling with sound, is dancing delightfully with sound, you see.
Can't have somebody
And
raping
nobody
the
was ever able
drums
to give a better account
or yelling into the mic all night if you want to have a good time.
of what the angels do in heaven. Why they sit around the throne of God and sing Hallelujah, Hallelujah.
Angels
Hallelujah.
mate
That's not just
or
Hallelujah,
rather
formal
have
way.
intercourse with the larynx. When they sing, they are melding into one. That's why they sing constantly and sweat fire that falls into the purgatory that burns all who don't sing glory and dance the dance into ash.
Yeah, that's the way it starts. And so, I mean, this game is great. In music, though, one doesn't make the end of a composition the point of the composition. If that were so, the best conductors would be those who played fastest. And there would be composers who wrote only finales.
Hurry.
People go to concert just to hear one crashing chord, because that's the end.
Fucking
Same way
gone.
dancing. You don't aim at a particular spot in the room. That's where you should arrive. The whole point of the dancing is the dance.
But
Now,
dance in
but
the
we don't
center.
see that
They
as,
see me there.
something brought by our education into our everyday
Row.
life. We've got a system of schooling which gives a completely different impression. It's all graded. And what we do is we put the child into the corridor of this grade system with a kind of, come on, kitty, kitty, kitty. And now you go to kindergarten, you know. And that's a great thing because when you finish that, you'll get into first grade.
Teach you how to play.
And then come on, first grade leads to second grade and so on. And then you get out of grade school, you go to high school. And it's revving up, the thing is coming. Then you're going to go to college.
Soon.
By Jove, then you get into graduate school. And when you're through with graduate school, you go out.
You work a little bit harder, I promise.
And then you get into some racket where you're selling insurance. And they've got that quota to make. And you're going to make that. And all the time, the thing is coming.
Just a little bit more.
It's coming.
Work.
That great thing.
I promise.
The success you're working for.
Work.
Then when you wake up one day,
little
40 years old,
harder.
you say, my God, I've arrived. I'm there. And you don't feel very different from what you always felt.
Same as it
ever
was.
Let down because you feel there's a hoax. And there was a hoax. A dreadful hoax. They made you miss everything. We thought of life by analogy with a journey, with a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end, and the thing was to get to that end.
It's well, it's now it's happening,
or maybe
brother.
heaven after you're dead. But we missed the point the whole way along. It was a musical
The wine
thing we were supposed to sing or to dance.
is already fermented.
Why do we love nonsense? Why do we love Lewis Carroll? With his "'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave, all mimsy were the borogoves and the mumraths outgrabe. Why is it that all those old English songs are full of Fal-de-riddle Ido and Hey Nonny Nonny and all those babbling choruses?
Merrily,
That
merrily,
when
merrily.
we
Life
get
is
hip
but a
with
dream.
jazz, we just go booty-booty-boopty-boo and so on and enjoy ourselves swinging it. It is this participation in the essential, glorious nonsense that is at the heart of the world, that isn't going anywhere, that is a dance. But it seems that only in moments of unusual insight and illumination that we get the point of this, and find that thus the true meaning of life is no meaning, that its purpose is no purpose, and that its sense is nonsense. Intellectual.
It's hungry. Aren't we all hungry? Is this thing? Yeah. Is this thing still on? We're gonna go eat it. Do what there will. Love is the law. Love under will.